Hello, Panthers, and welcome to Degrassi Schools In. I'm Evie.
And I'm Jocelyn, the host of the Degrassi Kid podcast.
Rumor has it today we are going to be talking about Degrassi Junior High.
Degrassi! I heard that rumor too, and it made me very excited.
Yeah. Season 1, episode 6. We are getting into it officially. I feel like episode 6, we're like, isn't it 11? Episode 10, 11, 12, 13? I'm just throwing numbers at the wall now. I don't know how many. We're like halfway through, I think. I think it's 13 episodes.
Yeah, 13 episodes. You're pretty much at the halfway mark. And I have to tell you, this is the episode of this season that I was most excited about because I have so much Degrassi lore to bring with you today. And you and I went on an adventure where we found Degrassi lore for ourselves.
I know. I was just going to say, I'm so excited to talk about this episode, not only because of the contents of this episode. It is very, I feel like every episode we've been talking about like queer stuff. So it's really exciting to get to that content of the series.
We're here.
But also, there's so much behind the scenes stuff to talk about this episode. And I am so excited to get into it. We went into the Degrassi Archives and got some crazy information. And when we were gathering that information, I didn't really know anything about what we were collecting. So it didn't, like, it was cool to know that we were like gathering it, obviously, but it didn't click with me. But now looking over it, it's like Jocelyn and I looked over what we're going to talk about today before we started recording, and my mind was like blown. There's so much to talk about, and I'm
Oh my
so
God.
excited.
This was almost a completely different show, and we get to talk about that. First, why don't we tell everybody what episode that we're talking about today? Break down the description.
So we are talking about season 1, episode 6, Rumor Has It. This episode aired on February 22nd, 1987, and it was written by Yan Moore and directed by Kit Hood. All right, so let me go ahead and read the episode description. Many of Miss Avery's students think that she is a lesbian. Caitlin insists that her teacher isn't gay. After dreaming that her classmates think that she is also gay, Caitlin begins to feel self-conscious at school.
Lesbian! Lesbian! Lesbian!
This was iconic.
This was iconic. That's one of my favorite moments. And if anyone here is on the Degrassi Kid Discord, you know that every time I join a voice call, it automatically plays lesbian, lesbian, lesbian from this episode. So then everybody can prepare for the incoming lesbian.
I will say it did like take me out of the episode for half a second when I heard that little voice clip of lesbian, 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 because I have heard that voice clip probably hundreds of times at this point from you joining calls and everything. Like I've heard it. And we sometimes we like to spam it when you're in there. Sometimes do the little soundboard, just lesbian, lesbian, lesbian. So yeah, it was nice to get to that point and finally see the iconic moment.
I have to say, I think if that moment happened in the next generation, it would be way more viral. Like it would be something that's clipped way more or referenced way more. But I think the fact that it happens in such an early part of the show, it just gets like lost to the history of the show.
I'm surprised that that isn't more of like an iconic viral moment.
A bunch of Degrassi kids screaming lesbian at someone, that's iconic.
Well, they also screamed gay, gay, gay. There's so much comedy there.
One thing that I think that would be fun to do about this episode is why don't we talk a lot about the behind the scenes lore that we have, and then we can break down some of our favorite quotes, favorite moments, ask some questions from the fans. What's one of your pieces of trivia that you have for us today?
One of the pieces of trivia that, because I've talked about before how on the internet there's not really that much to find. So one of the only pieces of trivia that I found was that this episode was banned by the BBC in the UK, and that was for dealing with themes of homosexuality. This wasn't the only episode that was banned. I know that later on the It's Late episodes with Spike are a part of this, and eventually BBC stopped. If from my understanding, BBC like completely stopped airing Degrassi. Do you have some more insight into that whole like debacle?
Let me give you the tea, baby.
Let's get the tea.
Yeah, you're totally right. The UK had issues with a lot of the storylines that Degrassi was presenting. This one was one of the very first. I mean, it's an early episode. We're only on episode 6 here, where they weren't happy with the themes of homosexuality in it. And then later, It's Late again with Spike, the pregnancy episode, really grinded things to a halt. And then soon, like part of their second season, their third season didn't even air in the UK originally because they had so many problems. And I actually found an article from around around this time that this was airing. It's called Pregnancy Offends British Taste. And this is what it has to say. Amanda Steptoe may just be the world's most famous pregnant teenager, at least on television. The Toronto actress who plays the expecting grade 8 student Spike on CBC's hot Degrassi Junior High goes to England next month to promote the show in the wake of a BBC decision to not air 4 episodes about her character's pregnancy. Apparently, British kids aren't as perturbed about the storylines as their elders. The show is the highest rated program in Britain, pulling in 6 million viewers. It also airs in West Germany, Netherlands, Sweden, Greece, Portugal, Australia, and the US, where viewers don't even mind the occasional A in the script, and has just been picked up by China. So Spike specifically went to Britain to promote the show in protest of them pulling it off the air and celebrating the box sets that the kids could now get their hands on and watch these secret episodes. Kind of similar to the Accidents Will Happen kind of thing about how people wanted to see it more because they couldn't watch it on TV.
Yeah, I never understand it because banning episodes almost always just makes people want to watch it more. It's not like people are like, oh, that was a topic. Okay, I guess I'm just not going to watch it. Like, no, people are going to go and seek it out, especially teenagers. If like your audience is teenagers, they're going to seek out what parents or whoever else doesn't want them to see.
Yeah, if you told me there was a secret gay episode of Degrassi, I would sell my soul for that episode.
Also, it's so funny because this episode I understand that times were different, but this episode is so not like controversial.
It's hardly even a gay episode. I think too, my experience with Degrassi. So when I was first introduced to Degrassi, my classic story, I watched it in health class. And because I watched it in health class, I did not like it because this 30-year-old man stood up and said, we're going to watch an episode about your changing bodies, which was the last episode you guys just watched.
Yeah.
And that in that framing, I did not care about Degrassi at all. But if they had said, there's this secret episode you can't watch, which is all about puberty and they talk about boobs, I'd be like, oh, I have to see that episode. So I honestly think that if they had embrace these kind of episodes and promoted it more, especially in the classrooms like they were doing at the time, people probably would not have cared at all about these scandalous episodes that Degrassi was producing.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because I think they kind of leaned into that in the marketing later on, like with the whole It Goes There.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're really pushing, like they were pushing boundaries, but I do think it's interesting how they kind of started marketing like, oh, Degrassi's the show that goes to the places that other places don't, or other shows don't go. Like,
Yeah.
that's very interesting how the times changed. Because yeah, again, I really did not find this episode controversial at all. And I'd be so curious to hear like from somebody who, because I know we have a couple of people who watched it in real time or around real time. So I'd be really curious if when they viewed this episode, if it was like if it felt controversial.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. That's one of the things I always wish is I wish I could watch it in its original context. Because even like the AIDS episode, for example, I didn't grow up with it as a huge fear in my life. And when I watched the show, I definitely know that it's impactful, but I think it would have played a lot bigger role in my life if this was happening at the time. So yeah, it would be really interesting to see. The other point that I wanted to make about Spike visiting Britain is that if you listen to the Degrassi Kid podcast, I interviewed Catherine Ellis, and she let us know that Amanda Steptoe actually specifically said, if you guys ever do a tour in the UK, can I please come? And then here's the situation where it's like, well, actually, you're getting banned over there, so let's go talk about it in the UK.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Did you want to get into some more behind the scenes stuff?
What's crazy is that this isn't even it. There's still so much more history to this episode. One of the things is if you've read The Mother of All Degrassi or you're familiar with Degrassi's origin story, you know that the reason the show Degrassi even exists is because of a man named Bruce Mackey. I'll go through very quickly who he is. Long story short, Linda Schuyler's a school teacher. He was a librarian at her school, and he would order in books for her about filmmaking. One book came in called Ida Makes a Movie. She decided that's the story that she wanted to film. And he said, sure, you can use my house on Degrassi Street. The very first episode was filmed there. And then now we have this whole history of the kids at Degrassi Street, Degrassi Junior High, all because of that connection. And if you're familiar with Bruce Mackey, you know that he was actually Linda Schuyler's best friend. But the problem with Bruce is he was a public educator by day and he was a secret gay man at night, which was a problem for him to deal with. So he struggled a lot. And Linda got a firsthand view into what it was like to be a part of the queer scene in the 1970s and the 1980s, which had a lot of violence in it. It was very fearful. We had AIDS going on at the time. So Linda Schuyler was very educated about gay issues in Toronto in the 70s. And she wanted to be able to tell that story on her show, but she was telling a show about teenagers. And at the time, you could not have a gay kid on TV or even gay kids experimenting on TV. No way. So Linda instead kind of played around with one of her rules schools where things always have to happen to the main character. In this sense, it's kind of happening to Miss Avery just through the lens of Caitlin. And this was kind of like her first letter to Bruce to say like, hey, we're going to talk about queer issues on TV. And we got the issue of Miss Avery. Now, the one question that I ask myself when I watch this episode is, I'm wondering why they chose a female teacher. And did they specifically have any thoughts about not having a male teacher like Mr. Radich or one of the other teachers at the school not be chosen for any particular reason? What are your thoughts about that?
I definitely think that that's an interesting thing. And we talked about that a little bit before recording, how, like, what possible reasons there could have been behind choosing a female teacher rather than a male teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Radich is the only established male teacher at this point, correct?
Yeah, they're pretty much the two established teachers that we have, and Doris Bell in the secretary's office.
Yeah, so I could see maybe that's just not the route or the implication that they wanted to make for Mr. Radich,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps. Like, because not, we'll get into this more later, but to me, like, Miss Avery very much seemed gay, and then they kind of switched it at the end and kind of implied that she wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
versus, like, I don't know if that was like a network decision or whatever else, but like, I could see maybe that's not the implication that they wanted to make, was that Radich was gay, but I also think there's a very interesting kind of question of how like gay men are viewed and portrayed in like gay relationships and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
There is definitely a history of gay men being viewed as gay men and gay love and all of that between two men being viewed as more like predatory or sexual, versus lesbian relationships with women tend to be desexualized and more romanticized. So I do think that's an aspect of it, perhaps.
I do think so too. I think when it comes to like young, like love with girls in any kind of capacity, it's mostly just this like fantasy of like innocence and daydreams and that kind of thing. Whereas, like you said, I think male on male relationships are typically portrayed as predatory, and I think we really see that throughout the history of the Next Generation, because there's a lot of student teacher relationships on Degrassi, and a lot of them
Yes.
are mostly male female. And I think a lot of them do not end in the idea that student teacher relationships are wrong. I think I don't feel like there's many times on Degrassi where we really leave conversations thinking that the relationship is wrong. It kind of just seems like maybe people are judging them for it, or like people aren't allowing them to be in a relationship. Except
Yes.
the one time I think we get a very clear example that student teacher relationships are wrong are with Tristan and Mr. Yates, and that relationship I would say is the most sexual of all the student teacher relationships and the most portrayed as clearly predatory.
I would agree. Yeah, because even if we compare like Mr. Oleander, Miss O, and then Mr. Yates, Mr. Oleander, it's questionable. It's more, he's more portrayed as like a loser,
He's a deadbeat.
as
That's the
a
lesson.
deadbeat. Is that the lesson is more like don't idolize like this slightly older guy,
Yeah.
versus Mr. Yates. First of all, like preys on Tristan, and then it's revealed later that he tried to grope Winston. Like he's very clearly like a predator. Miss O is not really portrayed as like a predator. She's just, it's, there's a very stark difference to me in how these relationships are portrayed, and it's very weird. It's very interesting that the one that is really portrayed as like this is wrong, this person's a predator, is the male on male relationship.
I totally agree. And even in the more innocent relationships, I do think they focus on older male relationships, because the very next time we get a relationship, which I know you know, this isn't a spoiler, that Snake's older brother is gay in the series. But again, we're not dealing with a high school student. The next time we deal with a gay character, it's Ashley's dad, who isn't a grown adult. And even when we do finally get our first gay character, they're dating an older man. So there's the focus whenever Degrassi is telling stories about gay relationships does seem to be either way from this older lens, which I find interesting. They do have like Charlie and Fiona have an age gap in their queer relationship, but primarily that's not the typical story that they're telling through lesbians, is these older younger relationships.
With the lesbians, it's like Paige and Alex are the same age or roughly the same. I believe they're actually in the same grade. Zoe and Rasha are maybe
Yeah.
a grade apart. Like there's not that age dynamic in the same way that there is for a lot of the gay male relationships.
Yeah,
So
I think female on female relationships appear more innocent, and then male on male relationships appear more sexual, at least in terms of the
in the
media's
meat, yeah, very
perspective, not my
good. So
perspective.
yeah,
The
yeah.
media.
I was
um,
gonna say if you didn't say that, let's clarify. In the media
Obviously.
representation,
I love gay people, for the record.
but it's, yeah, it's an interesting point of like why didn't why wasn't this a male student crushing on a male teacher? And I think
Exactly.
that could definitely be an aspect, especially back in the 1980s, that it
100%.
was viewed as too sexual. And
Yeah.
I guess to have like a male student having a sexual dream about a male teacher, or not even that the teacher, not even that the dream was sexual, because the dream with
Mm,
Caitlin wasn't really sexual, but I could see there's more implications.
more undertones.
Yeah, the more like quote unquote sexual undertones with a male student having a dream about a male
Yeah.
teacher. Because literally in the dream that Caitlin has, she's like sitting in the classroom 99% of the time, and then Miss Avery like touches like puts her hand on her for like 2 seconds. Like it's not
Yeah.
erotic.
It's definitely, I think it when we look at sexuality in the media amongst teenagers, I mean, this whole series started off with Stephanie being a sex symbol in grade 8. She's wearing these low-cut shirts. Boys are fawning over her, but the minute you have the same-sex relationship, the dynamics change completely about what you're allowed to show on TV. And I think that's even as reflective all the way into Next Class, because it is not until Degrassi Next Class that we really get a frank conversation between two men about having sex. Like, even Marco and Dylan's relationship was not very touchy-feely. They didn't talk about sex a whole lot. And it wasn't until we got that moment with Miles and Tristan talking about, hey, like, should we use condoms? And are you feeling okay? And one of them even says, well, this is really embarrassing to talk about. And the other one says, and that's why we need to. So it's really interesting that it takes until pretty much Miles and Tristan to have a frank conversation about sex between two men. And back now, even just a little touch of the shoulder is like, whoa, you want to show that to kids? No way.
That's banned. Like it's cool to see how far media and Degrassi came in terms of queer storytelling.
100%. It's interesting to think about. Now, one thing that's also crazy is that this storyline was never supposed to happen with Caitlin at all. Do you want to hear a little lore about the behind the scenes of this episode?
We've got a whole a whole lot of lore, a couple pages of lore, whole alternate episode.
So here's the deal. We talked a little bit about it in the beginning, but Evie and I went down to the Toronto Archives to visit basically the entire history of the kids of Degrassi Street all the way to Degrassi High. They have planning documents. They have behind the scenes photos. We have memos. We watched some drama unfold in these letters that kept getting shared around. It was quite hilarious.
Literally had to decode some like drama and some personal notes. It was crazy.
It was amazing. And one of the things that I knew that I specifically wanted us to find is these documents about these episodes that Evie and I are going through, because this is what we're here to talk about. So we found the original planning document for this episode called Rumor Has It. So for context, this episode came out in February of 1987. This planning document is from April 1986. So this is when they were first just planning out the first season. And what I think would be really fun for us is we're going to go through this beat by beat and then kind of talk about it in comparison to what actually happened or why we think they may have made some decisions to change some of this. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I'm really excited to go through this because yeah, this is like a completely different like alternate universe version of this episode.
Oh yeah, this is a whole different
It's-
show. It's crazy.
I'm excited.
Okay, so on the very top, it says unifying theme, sexuality. The issues addressed are homosexuality, homophobia, sexual roles, and gossip. So here's the plot as was supposed to originally happen in this episode. A sleepover at Mandy's house. Cake, cookies, pop, games, reading fortunes, talking about boys, laughing and giggling. Annie and Stephanie and everyone are having a great time. So, Evie, will you give us a little bit of insight into who the heck is Annie?
Annie is, well, she's in this episode.
Mm.
She was kind of like Kathleen's sidekick in this episode. She was also in the first episode as the little like feminist icon, as I called her. She was opposing Stephanie K's whole situation.
Mhm.
But then in this episode, I will say seems like she's had a little bit of a character change.
Yeah.
She's boy crazy, which doesn't fit.
Doesn't vibe with the first episode. So yeah, this is very interesting. Annie, first of all, I love that her name was Annie.
Annie Clark.
Annie Clark is what I thought of. Actually, when I first read these, the first time I ever went to the thing, I texted Annie and I was like, did you know that there was a lesbian named Annie on Degrassi? Or was supposed to be, I should say. But so if you're looking for her, she's the one, she's always wearing a beret. She was a red beret in the first episode. I think she's wearing a blue in this one. And of course we know Stephanie K, but Annie was actually littered throughout this. Like it was very clear that if there were main characters, it was Annie. I was going to say Annie Clark. It's Annie and Stephanie K were the two leading ladies of the series. And then she just, becomes this minor character that we never see again. But this episode is almost entirely from Annie's perspective, which is crazy. So, this is the next part in the outline. After Mandy's mom has been down twice to tell them all to be quiet and go to sleep, they decide to make joke phone calls to the teachers. Is your refrigerator running? Then you better catch it before it runs away. Ha ha ha. First, they call Mr. Radich. His wife answers. Then they call Miss Rodriguez. She herself answers. All the girls are laughing. I have to say, I do think Degrassi does one of the best portrayals at sleepovers, because even in this, I get it. Like, I feel the vibe. I know what they're going for. I will say I don't pick up on who Mandy is supposed to be. That could be Kathleen. Mandy doesn't have a lot of definition to her character in this outline, and I don't see her mentioned much anywhere else. But she could just be Kathleen. She could just be a throwaway character. We're not really sure.
It is interesting. It seems like Kathleen and Caitlin and Susie are not at this party, or at least it says and others, but I don't know if they're ever, any of those three are ever mentioned by name. So it's like a completely different, totally different party, basically.
Yeah, and well, Stephanie and Annie would have been in the grade above in this outline, so.
Oh,
And
so
you don't mix. You don't hang out with grade 7s.
Oh no. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they aged them down a little bit, I guess.
It seems like they aged them down by a year.
What grade is Annie in?
Well, in this, she's in grade 8. In the show, she's friends with Kathleen, so she's in grade 7. Okay. But when they call Miss Avery, another woman answers, which sets them talking about Miss Avery. Mandy has just heard rumors that Miss Avery is a lesbian. And it's more than just rumors. Fact. Miss Avery is not married. Fact. Someone saw Miss Avery with another woman, probably the same one, downtown together. Isn't it obvious? Can I jump in with one more fun fact?
Always.
The woman that we see Miss Avery with is Sari Friedland, who was the production manager of Degrassi. Isn't that cool?
That is cool. She was all over those planning documents too.
Oh my god, she did absolutely everything. And if you've read The Mother of All Degrassi, then you're very familiar with who Sari Friedland is. But I thought that was so cool. She appears in the episode. Annie comes to Miss Avery's defense. So what if she isn't married? So what if she has women friends? Her mom has women friends. That doesn't mean she's gay. Stephanie agrees with her, announces that anyway, there's nothing wrong with being gay. I believe that if there was a scene where Stephanie K said, "What's wrong with being a homosexual anyway?" she would be a gay icon. She would be the gay icon of the Degrassi Junior High series. Are you kidding me?
I do think that she would have been a gay icon fully.
What's wrong with being gay anyway? If that came out of Stephanie K's mouth, that would change the genre.
Has there ever been a drag queen who has done like a Stephanie K? Like,
on it. We're on it.
that would be so beautiful.
I would love that. Oh my god, that'd be amazing. Mandy and the others aren't persuaded. They resolve to find out the truth, to keep an eagle eye on Miss Avery, watching for any suspicious behavior. All of this disturbs Annie. She really likes Miss Avery. She especially likes writing essays for Miss Avery's social sciences class. Here's an adult who's willing to take time to talk to her about world events, who takes these things seriously, who understands. Here's an adult she can talk to. That's very nice. Annie doesn't feel any better about it when, on Monday morning, she sees Miss Avery being dropped off at work by a car driven by another woman. Sorry, Friedland. Mandy sees it too. This is the fun part. So then we get the B plot of this episode. You ready for this?
Yeah, this is so random.
Meanwhile, skateboards are the latest fashion in school. Annie dismisses skateboards as childish, but Arthur's developing a new type of skateboard, multi-person, more fun. Yick, meanwhile, is convinced skateboards are already passé, and he involves Arthur in a scheme to market what he sees as the next big fad, super balls. That's the B plot of this.
Can I ask, are super balls like those bouncy balls?
I think they must be.
Like a you know what I'm talking, like a, the listeners can't see how big of a ball I'm showing, like a
about 6 inches of diameter.
Diameter.
I'm gonna have to assume yes.
Yeah, I don't know what a super ball is, and that feels very like dated.
Yeah. I wonder if it's also like this B plot is paired with it for like an innocence factor, because it's so starkly different to what's going on in the main plot.
That's the super ball.
She showed me a super ball.
Yeah, like the ones in the, have you ever seen in like an Old Navy how they have like the big gumball machine that has the super balls in it? Apparently that's what they're called.
Oh, interesting.
Do they have those in Canada?
They must. I just don't go to Old Navy.
I don't think it's just Old Navy. That's just
this episode is sponsored by Old Navy. I've never been there. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting that they paired this as the original like B plot to this episode. I'm wondering
It,
why that was the decision.
it feels very random, especially when the theme of the episode is sexuality.
Yeah.
Like,
Super
like,
balls. I love it. It
it,
reminds me of Simpson when he gets balls for the class.
oh yeah,
Super balls.
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 Um, no, because I do think they in the episode that actually aired, they tied together the theme of like rumors better in the
Mm,
Arthur and Yick plot and then the main plot.
way better. Way, way better. I totally
These
agree.
just feel like two separate episodes. I do see the like innocence factor, but I don't know
Yeah.
if that would have worked for me.
And for the record, in the episode, the way that they do that is by having Yick and Arthur stalk after Rick, who they think has stolen something from
Yeah,
them.
I thought that
Because
was
he
really
has this,
interesting.
yeah, he has this like bad boy reputation. Then all of a sudden he wins the lottery, gets $100, and they think maybe he stole something.
Can Canadian children play in the lottery?
Okay, so these days, if you're in Quebec, you have to be 18. If you're anywhere else, you have to be 19. I'm not sure about the 80s, but I can't imagine you could have. What I imagine is me. Well, I partially was like maybe his like brother bought him a ticket.
Oh yeah, because he's living with his brother now,
Yeah,
supposedly.
that's my head
Because I was
canon.
like, his dad wouldn't have bought him a ticket, but I
His
forgot
dad,
he's.
oh my God, his dad would not have given him that money 100%. But his brother probably would have.
I was wondering that because I was like, how did you play the lottery? But he's a bad boy, so he doesn't follow the rules.
Bad boys play the lottery.
Bad boys illegally play the lottery.
I like that.
All right, what's next?
Here's the rest of the outline. Annie continues to ignore the speculation about Miss Avery. She talks to Miss Avery about her writing as before. But a little later, Annie is horrified to learn that people are saying that she's a lesbian too. The way she's always hanging around Miss Avery after school, the way she defends Miss Avery, Annie is confused. Is she a lesbian? She does like Miss Avery. She's had strange, sort of disturbing dreams about her and about some of the other girls too. Does that mean she's gay? I love this. But she doesn't want to be a lesbian. She hates the sort of things they say about Miss Avery behind her back. She hates the thought of people saying those sorts of things behind her back. The only person Annie dares to talk to about her fears is Stephanie. Stephanie did say there was nothing wrong with being gay. I want this episode. I
I
want
want it
this
so bad.
episode. Stephanie K and Annie, I ship them. I'm already in love with them. Like hashtag Sanny, hashtag Stanny, hashtag Stanny. Come
Stanny.
on,
Yeah.
Stanny. Oh my God. I think if they did an episode where Stephanie K was the person who helped someone through their queerness, oh my God, I think that would be iconic. I just can't get over how amazing of an episode that would be.
I know. I do really want this episode. The episode that happened was great, but it would have been
I want this all the way with Stephanie K.
all the with Stephanie K. All the gay with Stephanie K.
I love that. All the gay with Stephanie K. Okay. But when Annie does talk to Stephanie, listen to this. When Annie does talk to Stephanie in the dark room after school, they're both in the camera club, it says. Stephanie acts weird. It's as if she's afraid. The way she jerks back her hand when they accidentally touch, the way she can't wait to finish and get out of there, Annie is hurt and angry. Thanks a lot, Stephanie. Some friend you are. We would have gotten a scene in that dark room where Annie touched Stephanie's hand and Stephanie freaked out. I just think that's cinematic.
The dark room scenes in general, my first note was that I loved the dark room scenes. So getting like a queer coded, like heavily that would have been so beautiful to
That would have
get
been
like
so beautiful. And
a little
also,
hands touch action in the dark room.
yeah,
That's
I do
gay.
I do think the dark room raises the stakes because like you're in a very vulnerable part of the school.
Yeah.
You know, you're in this dark room with no lights in it. There's no one around. No one's coming in to check on you because they can't open that door. Like, I do think it raises the stakes a little bit in this context and maybe even adds a little bit more to that predatory mindset, right? Even though it's not intentional.
Oh, I
That's
like,
maybe.
yeah. Like Stephanie kind of feeling locked in with Annie, or like Annie feeling like she's locking Stephanie in or something, and feeling that
Yeah,
like predatory lesbian guilt, because that is so real as a queer woman, like feeling like you are like a creepy predator, whatever, for just like existing near another woman, like, and like
100%.
having feelings and having that attraction. That is so real. That's very
100%.
vulnerable. That's like
No,
vulnerable, but it's very real.
I had so many memories as a kid. Like if even just like changing around other girls, and you're like, oh my God, I
Yes.
like after actively trying way too hard to make it look like I'm not looking. But it's like, why would I? Like, you know?
Yeah, there's definitely that added like anxiety and fear when you recognize that you have that attraction of like, I don't want anybody to perceive me as being that way.
100%, especially in young people. The only thing I will contest to this, I cannot imagine Stephanie K caring about cameras and photographer and like being committed to this. I just can't. That's the one part that I'm like, I don't see that.
No, and do we know in this version of the show if Stephanie is the same, like if she's still the school president and all of that?
That's the thing is you don't learn too many details about uh
The greater
facts about the play
context.
yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to keep reading them throughout the rest of the
Yeah,
episode.
because we haven't gotten a chance to really look at all of the we like have all of these documents and haven't
Too
even
many.
gotten a chance. It's too much.
Literally
But I love
like
that
a
we're going through
decade.
it.
Me too, we're here. Okay.
We're here.
Annie decides that the only way to clear her name is to have nothing more to do with Miss Avery. She snubs the teacher in the halls, refuses to speak to her except when spoken to, and then only in monosyllables. She subs Stephanie too, who's trying to act as if nothing happened in the dark room. Annie isn't buying. I kind of like that Stephanie's trying to act like nothing happened in the dark room. I feel like the opposite could be like, she tried to come on to me. She's a lesbian. Instead, she's like, hey, like, let's just like
Pretend it didn't
say
happen.
this didn't happen. Yeah. But I can see why that would hurt your ego as a kid when you're not gay. Arthur's multi-person skateboard nears completion, and Yick's shipment of Super Balls arrives. The boys store the box in Yick's locker, take a sample each, and start going around giving demonstrations. Then we immediately transition back into the next plot. While handing back a paper, Miss Avery casually lays her hand on Annie's arm. Annie is terrified. She yanks her arm away. Miss Avery looks at her strangely, which is a mirror of the episode or the moment she just had with Stephanie.
Yeah.
Interesting. At the end of the day, there's a crowd around Yick's locker, eager to buy. Yick and Arthur collect the money. The locker door is opened, the box falls, and Super Balls everywhere, bouncing this way, bouncing that way, breaking windows. Pandemonium.
Yeah, I'm glad that this didn't happen.
No,
But
there's one more about it. All of Yick's profits go to repairing the damages. Oh, so they didn't even get it in the end. Yeah, they just don't like pair well together.
like it's cute, but I'm just like, why? Like
Wow.
just Wally. I don't
Yeah, I don't see the clear connection. It'll be interesting to see if anyone at home draws a connection between why these two episodes, like maybe there's some kind of subliminal theme we're not picking up on by just looking this
maybe
directly.
because yeah, I'm just like
Let
bouncy
us
balls. I don't
let
get
us
it.
know in the comments. Let us
Let
know.
us let us know in the comments if you understand this plot because I don't. Also, what is it? Is a two-person skateboard just like wider?
Great question. The sad thing is we'll never know.
Is this a thing that exists?
I imagine I want to be in the room whenever like we have to come up with a toy that doesn't already currently exist that Arthur and Yick would develop together in the 7th grade. Two-person skateboard.
I looked up two-person skateboard and there's just pictures of two people on a skateboard at the same time.
I like that.
So maybe it just didn't
Maybe
get invented.
maybe
Maybe we should
invented.
go into business. Yeah.
Degrassi Junior High's double skateboard. I would like that.
I really don't understand what a double skateboard is, but I guess we'll never know.
I just imagine two skateboards stacked on top of each other.
I would on top then you couldn't I would like tape them together, like side by side. This
Interesting.
is like that meme where it's like, how would a dog wear pants?
Great question. Let's talk about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's derail for like 20 minutes and talk about that. Okay.
Okay, we'll continue with the outline. I don't know if we'll ever get the answers that we need from this. But after school, Miss Avery waits for Annie. The girl doesn't want to talk, but Miss Avery walks with her. When the truth comes out, Miss Avery tells Annie not to worry. She is what she is. Anyway, lots of girls have dreams like that. Dreams don't necessarily mean anything. The key is not to feel guilty. If someday it turns out Annie is gay, she mustn't hate herself, which is kind of like the same idea, except it's more, I think in the Degrassi or the real version, it's kind of more placed on Miss Avery, like, and what if I was? Would you treat me any different? Which is
Yeah.
getting to the same lesson, but I think really still puts the onus on, like, is Miss Avery a lesbian is kind of the question of the episode more so than is Annie or Caitlin a lesbian. When Annie asks Miss Avery if she's gay, the teacher wants to know why Annie thinks she is. She pokes holes in all the facts, and she points out that, in any case, if she is or isn't, it's none of anyone's business, which I do think they keep in the episode.
I do. And which to me, why not just say it's not it's not your business? I don't know why. Even in the episode, I'm like, why are you letting her like give the evidence and like giving like I wouldn't have engaged that much. I feel like I would have just been like,
Yeah.
it's not your business to speculate. Like set a
Yeah.
boundary.
But I do think that's Degrassi taking all the preconceived notions that real teenagers would have at the time of like trying to build a case as to why someone might be gay, kind of like a witch trial, and then being like,
Yeah.
that's stupid, don't do that.
Yeah. It's just, yeah, she like walked through all of the evidence. I'm like, I would have just been like,
Yeah, I wouldn't
that's
either.
not your business.
I'm like, get out of here.
Like, why are you watching me? Why are you stalking me? Why are you so obsessed with me?
You're weirder for knowing that than me doing that.
Exactly.
Miss Avery leaves. Annie is left without a lot to think about. But there isn't time for that right now, as Arthur and a bunch of kids arrive on the new multi-person skateboard. Arthur asks Annie to join them. Initially reluctant, Annie is persuaded to give it a try, screaming and laughing, boys and girls together, falling and starting over again, trying to make the skateboard work. The group rolls off down the street. I can't with that part. That part, I can't.
It's
I can't.
so fucking so random.
There's no time for that right now as Arthur arrives with his new multi-person skateboard. It just feels like maybe there was like a company that had like a product placement they were gonna do and then they didn't end up making it. So like this is a stupid idea.
I would love if that were the case, if they like wrote it in for the
That's my rumor. That's my rumor for this episode.
rumor has it.
Rumor has it. Okay, but long story short, we just read to you what was supposed to be the original episode of Rumor Has It, which was not about Caitlin, it was instead about Annie. The question that I would like to pose to the audience is this. In Linda Schuyler's book, we learned that Stephanie Kay was one of the people considered to do the pregnancy storyline, but Linda Schuyler didn't want to do that because she was too much of the obvious choice. She wanted to show that pregnancy could happen to anyone. Then Caitlin was another option, and Linda Schuyler said, no, like I have this really deep connection with Stacy. I love the character of Caitlin. I don't want to put her through that. So then they chose to give the pregnancy storyline to Spike. I'm curious because this planning document does not have Caitlin as the main protagonist of the storyline. I'm wondering if because Linda had such a personal connection to the subject matter and had such a personal connection to Caitlin and the actor who played her, Stacy, is that where some of the choice came in to have Caitlin go through this storyline with Miss Avery? That's maybe my fan theory that I have about piecing all these pieces together that I know. But it does seem like this episode meant a lot to Linda, and it's clear in her book that the character of Caitlin meant a lot to her too.
I definitely think that that's a great possibility because I do think to a degree Miss Avery is meant to be kind of a Bruce Mackey stand-in a way.
Yeah.
It's supposed to represent that struggle, even though she supposedly isn't gay. We'll get back to that later. But
In
I
my
do
heart, she
think
is.
in my heart she is too. But I do think it's possible that she wanted to choose Caitlin for that because she really like connected with Caitlin.
Yeah, I agree. I wish we knew what Bruce Mackey ever thought about this, but I have to wonder in Linda's case, you know, you have this best friend, you're writing this story, you have this perfect character for them, and then you face this public scrutiny of even after you've taken all of the innuendos out and boiled it down to just this like really innocent story of still having people be like, you can't put that on TV, you can't talk to kids about being gay. And having it have this such a personal core to you. I can't imagine what that's like. And I'm so thankful that she was then able to continue the storyline she wanted to tell in Degrassi The Next Generation. By the end of it, gay kids are everywhere.
Yeah, I love that she kept clearly fighting for that
Yeah.
over the years. Like it was consistent that she wanted to represent queer storylines, even with so much objection and so
Yeah.
much like even till like season 12 of Next Generation or Degrassi, technically, there were still people trying to like shut them down and ban them.
Yeah, they were banned for that's a very interesting time too because they're getting boycotted for their trans characters, and now Degrassi has reached the point that people like Tristan are showing up without having to come out, or VJ are showing up without having to come out. There's just gay kids that are there now. So I always say this, but I really think Degrassi is just a time capsule of the
Mhm.
teen experience, and in contrast to the media and what teenagers are actually like and what the media says this is what you have to be like. And I think Degrassi is the perfect show to really combat that and capture what that's really like.
I agree because I think yeah, as like being gay became more mainstream and accepted and normal or whatever word you want to use, like being trans is the kind of the new issue that needs to be tackled and represented in this same way. And they did that with Adam. They started to do that with Yael. Unfortunately, they didn't really get to see that episode, that storyline all the way through. And I just really think that trans kids today are missing out on having, because I know for a fact that Degrassi reboot or whatever else in the future would have an amazing like if there wasn't a main character that was trans, I would be shocked.
Same.
I would be absolutely shocked if it were not like one of the main characters.
And this time they would have a real a real trans actor this time. Like, I think
Yes.
if Degrassi was always the leading conversation of queer conversations now, and with being trans or being non-binary, I can only imagine that they would do fucking amazing now. Specifically if Linda Schuyler is on their crew, because I read an interview once where she said that she kind of feels like she's the protector of Degrassi's values, and I really think that is the key to making any future reboots, is those values that she placed in the kids of Degrassi Street and now during this era,
Yeah.
they need to stay. Like, that is what Degrassi
Yeah.
is.
She is the heart. She's the heart of Degrassi.
100%. 100%. What's crazy is I have even more fun behind the scenes facts for you that you might
I
not.
know we haven't even really gotten into the episode discussion, and there's so much to talk about before the episode even
This is
opens
why
up.
with this episode, I'm like, can I have this one? Because I have a lot of fun facts
Yes.
to share you. One more before we even talk about the episode. I also love talking more about the fun facts anyway, so I'm probably not even going to have as many exciting things to say about the episode itself.
We balance each other out very well. I think
We
I do a lot
do.
better on like the discussion and dissection, and you're really good at the fun facts,
That's true. Thank you. I like that. It's a
the
good
history
compliment.
and all of that. I won't say fun facts, history. They are fun facts, but
This one is interesting. So I have, if you're unfamiliar, Degrassi, in kind of around the Degrassi High era, released a show called Degrassi Talks. And this is where they put cameras and microphones into the hands of the Degrassi kids. They went all across Canada and interviewed kids about the real topics that they talk about in the show: drugs, abuse, sexuality, suicide, even. They talk about everything. Each of the characters hosts an episode, and Stacey Mistician, because of this episode, rumor has it, she hosts the conversation around sexuality. And they released a book for this series as well. And I wanted to read you a portion of this book because what's really interesting, that you might not know, is that in real life, Stacey Mistician, who plays Caitlin, her sister is a lesbian. And her sister's name's Kim. And when you open up the book, I'll give you a picture if you want to post this online. But when you open up the book, it has a picture of her sister who looks just like her. And it has a quote from her saying, "No one made me feel it was okay to be gay, especially in high school." And Evie, I'm wondering if I can tell you a little bit about what she says in this book.
yeah, I would love to hear it.
Okay, perfect. What I find so interesting is the very first thing that Stacey asks her about is watching this episode of Degrassi. She says, "Kim, will you tell me, when you saw this episode of Degrassi Junior High that I did about homosexuality, how did it feel when you saw it?" And this was her sister responding. She said, "I have to admit, it was really hard for me because what I saw you doing on TV was everything that I was feeling at the time. I mean, I had a crush on my high school teacher, the same way that in the show, you were reacting to this teacher who everyone's rumoring to be gay. I didn't quite know how to deal with it. Part of me wanted to deny that I was having these feelings, and the other part of me felt that I had to admit it. I didn't really say anything to anyone after I watched that. I sort of went up to my room and read a book." So, how interesting to be sitting at home watching your sister on TV do a gay episode, and you're struggling with your own sexuality and being in the closet at the time.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Like that's a very unique feeling, and that's so. I'm glad that that was documented through
Yeah.
this series because I that's such an interesting story that I feel like would have been lost otherwise. Like there's no other context where that would ever really come up that we would be able to know that. So
Yeah.
I'm really glad that this Degrassi Talk series exists, and I can't wait to get into it fully once I've experienced the full scope of the show.
It is sad. I will say you gotta like I can't even sit down and watch it sometimes. But she does provide a lot more context in this too, that she was mostly struggling with her own sexuality and she wasn't out yet. But when she started to kind of feel like she might be queer, she tried to prove to herself that she wasn't by sleeping with boys, which is interesting. And she specifically said that this episode was difficult for her because she felt like Stacey had everything. Stacey was on TV, so she was invited to more parties. She had more friends. People wanted to talk to her more. Anytime she was hanging out with her friends, they would say, "Is Stacey coming?" So because Stacey had this clout of being on Degrassi, she felt like Stacey had more popularity. And now she was watching this story at home of her sister having this kind of like queer experience, or like or even publicly having this conversation that she's finding so hard to deal with. So it's definitely very interesting, and I think truly reflects how teen issues do not change, because then in 2011 I'm having those exact same issues where I'm not sure yet if I'm gay and I'm struggling with it, and then I start dating boys, and it's so interesting how it's Degrassi's this time capsule.
Yeah, that sentiment of like nobody told me that it was okay to be gay. Like that is definitely a sentiment that I feel like I've heard you say.
Yeah, I always say
That's
nobody told me it wasn't okay to be gay, but nobody told me that it was. That is quite
yeah.
literally my coming out story.
Yeah, so that's crazy that times may change and the context of things may change, but those feelings really don't.
No, exploring your sexuality and being confused, even if you're straight, I'm sure it's still the same of just like being confused of relationships and these things. And Degrassi really makes it clear of like, you might not get all the answers from Degrassi about what you're going through, but what you're going through you're not alone in this. It's not unique.
Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah.
goes through this in some way.
I'm curious what you think, but in my perspective from watching this episode, I don't necessarily, I think Caitlin is like straight, maybe bi curious, but I think the like what she kind of learned in this episode is more the fear of that judgment of being different. Like that
Yeah.
the scene of her, first of all, her like talking to her teddy bear and all that like made me almost cry. But the sentiment she said, like, I just don't want to be different. I don't want to be like seen that way. And I think that is more the fear than even her actually being queer. So that is, yeah, like straight people have problems too.
That's the lesson here. That's the
That's the
lesson. Straight
lesson
people have
here.
problems too. I agree. I do think it's more so on the rumor aspect of it and judgment, more so
Yeah.
than the queerness, which may be a detriment to queer people and not having a story that just says, "Hey, it's specifically okay to be gay." It's more so it's specifically okay to be yourself is kind of the
I
issue of this.
I think if they hadn't had Miss Avery argue like basically not being gay and then have because I really did not like that button at the end where they were basically implying that Mr. Radich and Miss Avery were like dating or whatever or whatever. I really felt like that took away from the impact. I wish that I understand that it was probably because of the times and everything, but I feel like it took away from
I agree.
like I feel like it would have been so much more powerful if it had at least been left ambiguous if Miss Avery were gay or not. Because I really feel like at the end they were like, but she's not gay. They're like, all of this, it's okay if she were gay, but like she's probably not.
Yeah, especially because that wasn't in the original outline of her leaving. In fact, what I think would be a better ending is if Miss Avery and Raditch got on a two-person multi-scooter and scooted away. That's the ending I want to see. Release the uncut
That's
version. No, but I do think you're right. I do think what I wish we also had was maybe those notes from the broadcasters of being like, okay, this is a great episode. You did what we wanted, but like you kind of got to make her have a boyfriend. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
it feels like a broadcaster note. It does.
Yeah. Because like when I guess it was Kathleen, I believe, who asked like if she had a boyfriend, and
Mm.
she was like, "Oh, that like hundreds, but
Yeah.
that's none of your business." How about just that's none of your business? Like,
That's none of your business. I have to say, I know there's a point where you talk about favorite quotes from this episode. I have to tell you, my favorite moment in this episode is when Annie says, "What else is there to think about anyway?" And Miss Avery goes, "Oh, girls, oh my
oh,
God,
girls.
clap, clap, clap." I
Thank you,
love,
Yan Moore.
thank you, Ian Moore.
Chef's kiss, Yan Moore.
I thought that was so funny and also subtle. You might not pick it up the first time you see it, but I thought it was so, so, so funny. And of course, she's not a lesbian. She's my friend.
She's not a lesbian. She's my friend.
I'm gonna start saying that about you more often. She's not a lesbian, she's my friend.
Yeah, all of my favorite lines were to do with being gay. Like, what's wrong with being homosexual anyway? And
Iconic.
Susie saying, I don't know what's going on, and Caitlin saying, join the club. I thought that was so cute.
I love them. I love their dynamics so, so much.
I do too. Susie and Caitlin were very cute, and I know that they were in Kids of Degrassi Street together. The actresses were. They were best friends, correct?
Yeah, they were total
Yeah.
besties. So from like
Let me see. Casey and fuck.
blank makes the headlines. Do you remember? Casey and fuck, that's it.
Casey and fuck.
So it's
Casey,
says an L.
Lisa.
Casey and Lisa. Yeah, and they went way, 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 way back because so the Kids of Degrassi Street, anytime someone talks about it, they primarily mean the last 6 episodes. That's like mostly as close to the Degrassi Junior High era as you get. But they were like, oh, they were in No Buys a Suit together.
I was gonna say, hadn't they acted together for like 5 years or something?
Yeah. Well, Lisa, when we first meet her in Noel Buys a Suit, and you and I didn't finish the episode together, but the episode ends at that wedding and she's there. Susie's there. That's Sarah Charlesworth
That's so
is her name
cute.
in real life. And her little brother is going to be on the show soon in real life. Her real life little brother.
A character?
Yeah. Susie's in real. Okay. Susie is played by Sarah Charlesworth, and Christopher Charlesworth is going to be on the show soon.
Oh, that's cute.
I
And
know.
is he like he's an actual character
He's a character.
with a name?
Yeah. His name's Scooter.
I've heard that name.
Yeah.
Sierra said that they liked Scooter.
Yeah.
I believe.
Sierra,
I like that.
if you visit Sierra Lucio 5 on Redbubble, you can also get What's Wrong with Being a Homosexual Anyway stickers.
What's wrong? I think, by the way, I think last episode when I was trying to quote that, I was like, what's wrong with being a homosexual? Or like, what? I could not get the quote right. So I'm glad I finally actually
You
know.
got to get the sticker on your laptop so then you can just see
I
it
do
anytime
have
you
the sticker. I do
showing
have the
up.
sticker on my laptop, but I can't see my laptop while I'm using
Oh,
it.
that's fair.
So,
That's fair. Get it tattooed. That's
maybe not yet.
that's the only reason I remember the quote. I'm in love with her. I have to peek all the time. I'm like, oh.
Oh, okay. Let me ask you, what line from this episode would you get tattooed? Do you have one?
Oh, what's wrong with being a homosexual anyway?
What's wrong with being a lesbian anyway?
I got it wrong too. 100%. I do love she's a lot not a lesbian, she's my friend. That is iconic. I do
That'd
love
be like a
that.
matching tattoo vibe.
Yeah.
Not a lesbian. She's my friend.
I like the other stuff. Okay, one sec, my cat wants out. Brief
Okay.
pause.
Brief pause. So speaking of Sierra, they sent in a question, which I think is a great like point of discussion. How do you think this episode would have changed if Miss Avery were confirmed to be a lesbian at the end of this episode? If it were like unambiguous, like,
Oh.
yeah, I'm a lesbian. What about it?
I know personally as a queer person, I can imagine the audience like that are actually going through this would have made such a huge difference to have actual queer representation on television and not so much ambiguity. In terms of the
I don't think it
show,
would have aired.
I don't think it would have aired. I don't think it would have at all. In terms of
No.
the show, I do like because in reality at this time it was not okay to be gay, and especially be someone who's working with kids. I know that one of the concerns that Bruce had was that people would think he's a freaking predator. Like that's one of the
Yeah.
issues. Even though he loved his community so much, did so much, didn't matter.
Yeah.
It would be completely erased the minute someone found out this about him, no matter who he was as a real person. So I do think that it would maybe ultimately end to Miss Avery being fired. Like I think parents would probably become upset and get involved. And, Mr. Radich, I think, would have an attitude of like, this sucks, but those are just the rules. Like, sorry, you have to get out. So similar, not too much, not to spoil too much, but similar to kind of the feedback maybe Spike gets about being pregnant in high school. I think maybe that would be a similar arch that Miss Avery goes through of ultimately being removed from school.
Interesting.
I do think someone like Kathleen kind of, and especially in this early seasons, kind of has the vibes of someone who may even go to the extent of ratting out Miss Avery, or maybe even make allegations against Miss Avery.
In this episode, yeah,
Yeah.
and I will say, I did not like Kathleen in this episode, but I did like that they used a main character for that
Yes.
rather than having it just be like some no name, like, oh yeah, that girl's wrong. Like that girl's like, it's one of the main characters. And I really appreciate that, even though I'm like, Kathleen, come on. Like,
You
first of
need
all, mind your business. Second of all, like,
your whole lesson from this is just leave gay people alone.
literally, like, just leave them alone. Like,
I
it's
definitely
not.
agree. I think Degrassi's best moments happen when they happen between main characters, 100%.
Yeah, I think it would have lost a lot of impact if it was just even if it were like, because I know Annie isn't like relevant later and I know that Kathleen is. Like if it were
Yeah.
Annie that were doing all this and I knew that she doesn't really come back or become relevant, then I would be like, oh, that doesn't really hit as much. But I don't know what happens with Kathleen, but I know like I've seen pictures of her like way later in the series. So I know that she is somebody that doesn't just go away. So
Oh
I
no.
appreciate that they didn't just have the character who's kind of inciting all this bullshit like away.
I agree. So let me ask you, how do you think this episode would change if Miss Avery was for sure a lesbian?
Yeah, I do think, like I said, it would not have aired, first of all.
Do you think it may be different if it was confirmed that a student was gay?
Like as in like Caitlin or Annie, for
Yeah,
example, if
Caitlin.
she had kind of come to terms with,
Yeah, what do you think if this episode ended with her being like, I think I'm okay. I think I'm gay.
I think I'm okay.
I think I'm okay.
Yeah, I definitely think that I don't think that that would have happened back then, but it would have been,
I think it would have incited a riot. I really do.
yeah, I don't think that if the slightest implication, not even the mention of like somebody possibly being gay got it banned. I unfortunately can't see it like happening,
Yeah.
which is because I don't want to know, but I'm trying to think. I guess Snake's brother is the only, don't tell me, but the only like out queer character within that era of the show.
Yes.
So yeah, so this is just way, way too early for any
I agree.
of
I
that.
find it hard to even
Which
like imagine because like I think Caitlin going through school, it would truly be like the only thing we can learn about her because life would be so difficult for her and being out because it was difficult to be out. I didn't come out of the closet until 2011.
in regards to Miss Avery being like it's not even accepted these
Yeah.
days for a teacher to talk about their sexuality and talk about like even just like a male teacher talking about having a
Yeah.
husband can get like cause such controversy in 2023.
Exactly.
So Miss Avery would have been like targeted, unfortunately. And yeah, I don't think a gay student would have happened.
I agree. Sarah also had a very interesting question, which was how would this episode change if it were a boy student? For example, what if Snake crushed on Mr. Raditch? Give me that episode. I want it.
I know. Yeah, we talked about this. We talked about this a little bit earlier in regards to like the representation of male relationships kind
Yeah,
of being seen as predatory or more sexualized. So I think Raditch would have like gone to jail. Like it would have been like it
100%.
wouldn't have been as innocent and as soft as with and I'm glad they did I'm glad they didn't do that.
Can okay, I'm not saying, okay, let me just say what I feel. If
Okay.
Degrassi had have made an episode of TV where Snake had a thirst trap dream about Mr. Raditch while the entire room calls him gay, I need to see that. I need to see that. I don't think Degrassi should have done that, but like if you told me that, can you imagine a thirst trap Mr. Raditch while everyone is just screaming gay at Snake?
Please.
Please, please give me the
I
AU.
need that.
Give me the fan fiction of
I
that.
will I'll write that fanfic.
That would be crazy.
I also love the nickname that we've started in like Discord voice chats. I forget who came up with it, but they called him Daditch. And
Oh, I was
Sierra,
not there for that.
yeah, Sierra put that in their voice message that they sent me asking questions, and they were like, "You don't
Daditch.
have to." They were like, "I kind of regret calling him Daditch, but like you can include it if you want."
Oh my
So
God.
I don't remember who to credit for that, but it wasn't me.
In my like I have to like clarify, like in reality and in logic and stuff, no. But in like Mimi hilarious head brain, yes.
What of him being
Of him
Daditch?
being daddage, of him having a daddage like sex dream with Snake, not a sex dream, but like a sexy dream, I should say. A
Like
fantasy.
a dream like JT had about Liberty,
Wibbity,
but
what?
with
I want to say daddage.
Wadich.
Waddage.
Wadich.
Waddage. I like that. But yeah, I do think it kind of echoes the sentiment that it would kind of seem predatory and it would be a lot more sexually overt, I think, than the subtle tones. Not that it should be. I just think that's how media is.
No, that's how that is literally how media represents male on male relationships a lot of the time.
Yeah, I totally
Even if you
agree.
come, I mean, literally think about like the movie Carol in comparison to like Call Me by Your Name. Like they're completely different.
I've seen
What?
neither.
You've seen neither. Okay, well,
I've seen Degrassi.
um, okay, so Mr. Yates and Tristan versus Miss O and Sav.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Like Miss O and Sav have like a cute little relation or a cute little moment with like twinkly lights and like slow dancing. And Mr. Yates invites Tristan over to his apartment to drink and like do stuff.
Yeah, it's like very clearly assault. Like I think even a teenager could watching it could be like, this is assault and this is bad. Yeah, Miss O and Sav, like I really feel like they left us on like, oh, if the situations were different, they could have been together, but people just don't understand.
Yeah. Even with like
It's giving Pretty Little Liars.
it's giving Pretty Little Liars. But with like Paige and Mr. Oleander.
The lesson is don't idolize older men because they're probably deadbeats. That's the
Yeah.
lesson.
It's not like he's wrong for pursuing a teenager
No. Like
at
it not
all.
at all. Not at all.
Even with Paige and Mr. O, it's very much framed as Paige going after Mr. O
They're the pursuers.
versus like there's a scene of Tristan. Tristan's very much a victim. Like he is like talking about how his parents are getting a divorce and like nobody's taking him to his dentist appointment and all this kind of stuff. And Mr. Yates like overhears it and like he's just very much a vulnerable like victim in the situation.
Yeah.
And that's not how most of the like straight relationships are straight age gap, like teacher student relationships are portrayed. They're very much portrayed as like romantic.
I completely agree. And I would feel better about it if they just had a very clear example of, hey, like I understand that maybe Degrassi learned that they were doing this with student teacher relationships, but like, why does it the same way I feel with Adam dying in a fucking Texan driving accident? Why does it have to be the queer kid that you tell this lesson through? Like,
Yeah,
straight,
why does a queer kid have to get the real,
yeah,
like every other person gets like a romanticized situation, and then
yeah,
the queer character is the one that gets reality. Even I was gonna say, even with like Zoe, like getting this, like it's the queer characters get punished so
I
much.
agree. I totally agree. Is there anything else you want to talk about for this episode? I really feel like we talked about it.
I did think it was funny, and I'm curious if you also did this. So in the hallway, when Mr. Radich and Miss Avery were talking, I believe it's Annie is like, wouldn't it be so romantic if they were having an affair? Was I the only one? Was I the only one who also shipped my teachers like that? Like I 100% was like I was like had this whole world in my head where I was like, those teachers are definitely like, was I the only one that did that?
No, rumors flew all the time. I specifically remember my gym teacher was rumored to be dating this like TA. And then I remember one time she came to school in a like basically a crop top. And you were not allowed to wear crop tops to school, but we had like a class with him specifically that day. And the rumor was that she wore this to get his attention. Like we were fully in their business. We were in their business.
Yeah.
And then whenever we would see them like talking to each other, we'd be like, oh, that's evidence. That's evidence. I fully remember.
Yeah. You remember this like
I'll
15
clarify.
years down the line.
She didn't wear a crop top. She wore like a shirt that like when she like stood up, it raised up. But like to us, we were like, oh my
You're like, oh
God,
my
she's in
gosh,
her
she's wearing a
underwear.
bikini.
Yeah.
She's like, no. So that was very, as soon as that line happened, I was like, that I was reminded of that whole like aspect of being a middle schooler slash high schooler of just like,
100%.
oh, those teachers are fucking like,
Oh, 100%. Even just like if they
oh,
look at each other, you'd be like, yep,
yeah. You like see them talk in the hallway and you're like,
that's it.
I see y'all. I see y'all.
Though in like any other context, teachers are not human beings. Like to me,
No,
they
but
live at the school. I remember one time I ran into my teacher, my fourth grade teacher at the grocery store and he was buying toilet paper. And I was like I'm like, you're a fucking human being. You need essentials.
doesn't the school supply toilet
Yeah.
paper?
I know
Like,
it's only one ply, but like suck it up. Yeah, teenagers love drama and gossip. That same gym teacher that we thought was in this relationship with his TA was the one who showed me the Degrassi for the first time. So I'll never forget him.
what was his name?
I know it, but I don't want to say it.
Okay, fair. Okay, let's see.
Maybe he's a
I'm
fan.
looking. Yeah, maybe he's listening. Hi.
Because of
Were you
him,
fucking your TA?
yeah, will you let us know, please? I really think they were. Like the evidence was like kind of irrefutable. But I will say he briefly made me want to be a health teacher because I was like, you just get to fucking show Degrassi episodes all day and talk to them. Like, I want to do that. But I also the human body scares the shit out of me. Like the pregnancy like thing
Yeah.
alone about a human being growing inside of you freaks the shit out of me. So I couldn't imagine having to talk to kids about
having
it.
to.
What's an embryo?
No.
I'd be like, ugh.
With your health and PE, was the teacher who taught you health the same teacher that taught you PE?
Yeah.
Like you just like switched between the gym and then the classroom?
Yeah.
Okay. I was
Was
curious
that for
if it
you?
was the same. Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay.
Audience.
Weigh
How was your
in.
gym and health
Flash
class?
poll.
Slash poll.
I
Was
was
your
in
health teacher the same?
I was in IB gym and we had to like write papers
About what?
about
Sports?
like athleticism and nutrients and like, oh my God, it was
Did you guys
brutal.
also like exercise or
Yes,
it...
but we also exercised our mind. But yeah, we did also exercise. Tennis was my favorite. Tennis and basketball. Least favorite, the beep test and dodgeball.
the beef test?
The beep test.
Oh, I thought you said the beef test. The fitness gram pacer test?
Yes.
I was gonna say
I think we're getting way off rails now.
I am. I'm looking through my notes though. I do want to say that I did enjoy the way that they tied in. I think I kind of already said this, the theme of Yick and Arthur, like believing the rumors
All the
with
rumors are true.
Rick.
Yeah.
All the rumors are true. Yeah.
I agree. I definitely think this is a way better subplot than what they had planned originally, especially because that subplot could have gone anywhere. It felt also more like a C plot, maybe, that you could just kind of shrink in there.
I do think that this episode had a stark lack of two-person skateboards,
I agree. I give it a
but
0 star.
only for that aspect. Everything else, I would say like a 9 out of 10.
I do love this episode, and the fact that it comes with so much lore makes my Degrassi Kid brain feel
Yeah.
so good. When you were like, "Hey, can you do this episode with me?" I was like, "Yep, but we're gonna talk about this and this and this and this and this and this." Oh,
This is exactly what I wanted.
yeah. Get me back for It's Late.
I I can do that.
Thank you.
Would you like to officially claim it's late?
I would like to claim It's Late.
Katniss would like to officially claim. Did she just meow a little bit?
She's sharing her opinion.
Katniss, what do you think of this episode?
My mom's a lesbian.
Said meows being, meows being, meows
Meowsbian,
being.
meowsbian, meowsbian. Well, Evie, I had a great time talking about Degrassi with you, and I can't wait to come back.
I can't wait to have you back. Is there anything that you wanted to promote?
My thing to promote is the Degrassi Kid Discord, discord.gg/Degrassi Kid, where we hang out and talk about Degrassi like this all the freaking time.
We do, and we have a lot of really fun events. We've been watching Glee a lot recently.
We have been. It's my first time watching it.
It is. And next we're going to be starting our Degrassi Kid podcast. So look out for
Kid.
that.
I have
Degrassi Kid.
I have a lot of opinions that I hear aren't the standard opinion, so it might be controversial.
Did you want to share which characters you identify or which characters you think you are?
I feel like I am 50% Rachel Berry and 50% Jacob Ben Israel. I just feel it in my heart. They're both superstars, and so am I. I also didn't like Blaine the first time that we got Blaine. And is there any other controversial story? Oh, I also didn't know that Santana and Brittany broke up in the song
Oh my
Mine by
gosh.
Taylor Swift, because I'd always watched it on
This is
YouTube.
trauma.
It is. The only thing that I knew about Glee was like GIFs on Tumblr, and I would see some of the lesbian scenes on YouTube. And one of the scenes that I would see is Santana singing Britney, Mine by Taylor Swift. So I thought it was like a love song. I thought she was being like, I'm so sorry I wasn't good to you. I want to be with you for the rest of my life. You're the most important thing that ever happened to me. And then when I went into Glee, I was actively waiting for that song. I was like, I can't wait for this because this is the one thing I know and the one thing I love. And then we build up 4 seasons later. I find out it's a breakup song and it's the end of the relationship. I was depressed after that. I was so mad after that.
It was a beautiful thing to witness you reacting to, and I just that is if any way that I can promote the Degrassi Kid Discord, it is getting to see reactions like that because you were dumbfounded.
I was so sad. And then the next thing I'm excited for is I'm waiting for the school shooting episode of Glee. I know that there's a school shooting episode, and I'm just kind of excited. I know Glee is nothing like Degrassi, and I can't imagine it being that serious of an episode, but I am just kind of curious in terms of teen media portraying that, what it looks like with Glee, you know? Because that's the thing is I only ever watched Degrassi, so I don't have this other context.
Yeah, so I'm glad that we're introducing you to some more teen dramas. So if you want to help Degrassi Kid widen their scope of media past only Degrassi, come join the Degrassi Kid Discord because we talk about all sorts of stuff. We've been very much forcing them to open their scope. We've been watching musicals. We've been
about to watch
having a
My
lot of
So-Called
fun.
Life, which is a great show. I have seen that one.
I'm excited for that one.
Yeah.
Dave is hosting that one, right?
Shout out to Dave.
Dave. Oh, we just did that at the same time.
We must love Dave.
Yeah, shout out to Dave and shout out to everyone who has supported Degrassi Schools In. I am so happy with the way that things have been going, and I'm so excited to continue making episodes in the new year. I'm about to be on episode 7, which is insane to me. I'm so grateful to everyone who has supported me on this journey so far, especially you, Jocelyn. I could not have done this without you. And there are so many people that are listening that I couldn't have done this without. So
and we
thank
are
you so
all
much.
so proud of you because you're doing so well. You're doing amazing, and you're
Thank
connecting us all
you.
in a new, interesting way, and we love you for it. So thank you.
I'm really glad that I can share my experience with watching Degrassi Junior High for the first time. It's been really fun, and I think we're slowly speeding up the recording process. This one, I released my last episode a couple days ago, and now we're recording.
You're crushing
So
it. And what's your next episode?
my next episode is Best Laid Plans,
And
right?
what do you know about it going into it?
I know it is about sex, I think.
Ooh.
What I do know about it, I know the only thing I know about it is that Joey goes to the store to buy condoms and Pat Bevan is there.
I love that. I love that.
Stephanie K's mom. One of my favorite people on
Interesting.
Instagram.
So, sorry, you said, let me clarify. Joey is going to buy condoms and Stephanie K from Stephanie K's mom. That's what you know?
Oh, wait, no. Joey and Wheels are going to the store
And who are they for?
to have Stephanie?
Yeah, but like which boy is going to have sex with Stephanie?
Wheels.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
I would have said Joey, but since you just clarified that, I thought about it more and I'm like,
No!
I honestly did think it was Joey.
Well,
I hadn't thought about it that deep until you said with who, and then I remembered that I read that Joey and Wheels were there. So now I'm like, Wheels.
not Joey? Because remember, Joey was originally supposed to have a pregnancy storyline with Stephanie.
Yeah, but now it's Wheels. I think it's gonna be like I think it's gonna be like the Jimmy and Ashley plotline where they
Ah.
are not ready for sex, but they're both getting ahead of themselves.
I have to say, the fact that Ashley Amazon fucking orders condoms to her house in 2001 always blows my mind. I'm always like, what? You could do that back then? But
I
anyway,
don't feel like you could have. That was like same day delivery.
that's the kind of cameo I would want to have, is the condom delivery driver. Anyway, I think we're done now.
I think we are done now. We floundered a little bit near the end, but we were so on topic for a little bit there.
We
We
crushed it.
killed it.
This is a good episode.
Okay, we did.
I can't wait to hear your
All
next
right.
one.
Let's say goodbye to the Panthers.
This is my favorite part.
Yeah.
Goodbye, Panthers.
Bye, Panthers. And then the music starts playing. I don't know if that's what it sounds like.